Maddie, and today I've come to the cinema. I love watching movies, but there's one treat I like to have most when I'm watching a film. Can you guess what it is? Yes, it's popcorn, of course. Thank you. Do you like popcorn? Have you ever wondered how popcorn works? Why and how does it pop? Let's find out.
How does it work?
Popcorn!
When we eat popcorn, it looks like this. Soft, white and fluffy. They look a bit like little clouds, don't they? But it starts out like this, as pieces of corn that we call kernels. But to turn this into popcorn, we need to cook it so that it gets hot. This is microwave popcorn, and inside the bag are lots of kernels of corn like the ones I've just shown you. And we're going to cook it inside the microwave. You might even cook popcorn like this at home.
Remember, you should always get a grown-up to help you use the microwave.
Nothing's happening yet, but that's because we need to wait for those kernels of corn to get really hot. It smells really good already though. Can you hear that? The corn has started to pop, turning it into popcorn. Popping has slowed down, so do you know what that means? It means the popcorn is nearly ready. It's ready! Let's have a look, shall we? Oh, it's steamy and hot and it smells incredible. Careful, make sure you get a grown-up to do this bit for you though, because it's very hot. And there they are, ready to eat. But what happens inside the bag? How does a small kernel of corn turn into a piece of popcorn like this?
Every kernel of corn has a hard shell on the outside and a soft layer of white stuff called starch on the inside. And inside the starch, there's a tiny droplet of water. When the corn is heated, the starch melts and the drop of water starts to expand, which means it gets bigger. Eventually, it gets so hot, it starts to turn into steam, like when water boils in a kettle. The steam builds up inside the kernel of corn and pushes against the hard shell. Eventually, it can't hold it anymore and the pressure bursts the shell with a pop. As it pops, the starch pours out and immediately cools into the soft white bit we see when we look at popcorn. Let's see it for real, shall we?
My special camera will show us how. Let's take a look.
Because I couldn't put my special camera in the microwave, I filmed this popcorn being cooked in a pan. It pops exactly the same way. Wow, there they go. See how high the corn jumps? It's very quick. Let's see it again in super slow motion. Can you see the kernels heating up? As the kernel of corn gets hotter and hotter, so does that little droplet of water inside. It grows bigger and bigger inside until it turns into steam and just has to burst out, pushing the white starch out with it. Amazing.
I loved seeing how popcorn works. What was your favourite bit?
Can you remember the name for a piece of corn before it turns into popcorn? That's right, it's a kernel. Did you hear the sound the corn made when it popped? It was loud, wasn't it? And did you see the popcorn popping in slow motion? It jumped really high.
Now, I've got my popcorn ready to snack on later, but first, I need to make my dinner, and I'm going to have my favourite, pasta. Do you like pasta? I love all the different shapes and sizes, from small tubes to little shells. And of course, spaghetti. Pasta first came from Italy, but now you can buy it everywhere in the shops. You can buy fresh pasta, even dried pasta like this, or pasta sauces in jars. But what's in pasta and how is it made? Let's find out.
How is it made?
Pasta.
It all starts with a giant pasta making machine, and we're going to find out how dried pasta like this is made.
This is a pasta factory, and all these machines mean it's very noisy.
In this factory, pasta is made from 2 ingredients, water and something called semolina. This is semolina here. It looks like a yellow powder, but it's made from a type of wheat called durum wheat that grows in fields. It's also used to make some breakfast cereals. But when you mix water and semolina together, you get pasta. But we're going to need a lot more semolina than this. These huge tanks are full of semolina. Each one can hold about 150 tons worth. That's the same as about 150 cars. But how does all that semolina get from the tanks to inside the factory?
The semolina travels along this grey pipe and into the pasta making machine, where it will be mixed with water.
Water comes into the machine through this tank, and it's mixed with the semolina inside this silver tube. They're spun around together to make pasta dough.
Here it comes. This is what the mixture looks like.
This is the pasta dough, but at the moment it just looks like a pasta sausage. We want it to be a squiggly shape, and for that we need a special cutter. This metal disc is called a die, and the pasta dough is pushed through the die and all these little holes, and that's what gives the pasta its special squiggly shape.
Let's see what happens to the dough as it's pushed through the die.
Look at that! Can you see the golden pasta squiggling out of all the little holes in the die? It's like long blonde curly hair growing out of the machine. It looks really fun, but it's too long. That wouldn't fit on your plate for your dinner, would it? So we need to chop it into smaller bite-sized pieces. The cutter chops the pasta into the perfect sized pieces. And now they're tumbling down this slide, ready to go on to the next stage of the machine.
Look at all those cut pieces of pasta. The machine is bouncing them up and down to spread them out.
Let's use my special camera to get a closer look. The machine is bouncing the pasta, and it's making the pasta look like it's wiggling like worms.
The pasta is now the right size and shape, but it's still not finished. To make it hard, like the dry pasta you get at the shop, it needs to be dried.
The soft pasta falls into the dryer up there, and then it travels all the way through to come out the other end. Just look how enormous the dryer is. Let's see just how big the dryer is, shall we?
1, 2, 3, 4.
is big. The pasta making machine is all controlled by a computer, and this shows us how the pasta is moving inside the dryer. It goes backwards and forwards along this blue line, and look, it's nearly ready to come out the other end.
After 4 hours in the dryer, the pasta is ready. It comes flying down this tube, which looks like a helter-skelter.
Look at that! That's amazing! Whoa! Can you hear the rattling noise? That's the sound of the dried pasta zooming down the helter-skelter into the bags below. It's going so quickly. I'd like to be a bit of pasta going down that. It would be really fun. The last stage is for the finished pasta to get packaged up and sent to food companies all over the UK. And that's a job for that robot. Inside each of these bags are hundreds of dried pasta shapes that look just like this. Do you know what this pasta shape is called? It's called macaroni. You might have even had macaroni and cheese for dinner. I loved seeing how pasta was made. Did you?
Do you remember the name of the special machine that pushes the pasta into shapes? That's right, it's a die. Did you hear the rattling sound of the dried pasta as it went zooming down the slide? And did you see the machine bouncing the pasta up and down? It looks like wiggly worms.
So the next time you have pasta for dinner, you'll know just how it's made. And when you have popcorn as a treat, you'll know how and why popcorn pops. See you next time.
There are lots of things all around us, exciting things that surround us.
But how does it work?
Do you know?
How is it made?
Do you know? Things that go up, things that go down, things that go pop, things that go round with special cameras to show you inside. It's going to be a big surprise.
But how does it work?
Do you know?
How is it made?
Do you know? Do you know?
Let's find out!
Hello, I'm Maddie, and today I've come to see a very exciting vehicle. See if you can guess what it is. It carries people in it, it doesn't have wings, and it has a big piece of metal on top that spins round and round. Can you guess what it is? Okay, I'll give you one more clue. It sounds like this. That's right, it's a helicopter. Noisy, isn't it? Helicopters are amazing to watch. Have you ever seen one flying in the sky? You often hear them before you see them. This bit of the helicopter is called a landing skid, and there are two of them. They're the helicopter's feet. This bit at the front is where the pilot sits to fly the helicopter. It's called the cockpit. And then this long part at the back of the helicopter is called the tail boom. And at the end of it is the tail rotor. This spins round and round when the helicopter flies, just like the big rotor at the top.
This big rotor is really important because it helps make the helicopter fly.
But do you know how a helicopter rotor works? Let's find out.
How does it work?
A helicopter rotor.
To get get a closer look at the rotor at the top of the helicopter, I'm going to use my special camera. So here we go, let's move it right to the top. This part in the middle, that is called the rotor disc. And then these two long metal things coming out of the sides are called the rotor blades. Let's move along. They are so long, aren't they? But can you see that one edge of the rotor blade is slightly thinner than the other? I think it looks a bit like a fish, don't you? But let's move back to the middle now to look at the rotor disc. The rotor disc has lots of metal parts, doesn't it? So to understand how it really works, we need to look in more detail.
On top of the helicopter is the rotor. The long blades meet in the centre and are attached to a metal pole called the rotor mast. When the helicopter engine starts, the rotor mast starts to spin round and round, making the blades spin too. Another circle of metal, called the swash plate, also spins round. It's attached to the blades by two metal poles called control rods. These rods are connected to controls inside the helicopter cockpit. To make the helicopter take off, the pilot moves a lever upwards. This moves the control rods in the rotor, which makes the blades move. When the blades are in the right position, they push the air downwards, and this allows the helicopter to lift up into the air. The pilot pushes another lever to make the rotor tilt up at the back, and this makes the helicopter go forwards. To go backwards, the pilot pulls the lever back, which tips the rotor up at the front, so the helicopter goes backwards. Clever, isn't it? Shall we see the rotor working on this helicopter? But before we fly, the pilot and I need to put our headsets on. And I'm going to be talking through this. It's called a microphone. And it might make my voice sound funny. I think we're ready to go. Watch the blades start to turn. Slowly at first, and then very, very fast.
We're just warming the engine up now, but when we're ready, Tom's going to pull the lever, which will move the blades into the right position. And when we're catching the air, we'll take off. Here we go. Wow! You can see Tom the pilot now is using the cyclic lever to tilt the rotor up at the back, and this makes the helicopter go forwards. Wow, we're so high! The view is beautiful from up here. Now we're heading to a town. The houses look tiny. They look like dolls' houses. We're coming into land now. And there we go. We're back at base. What was your favourite bit about finding out how helicopter rotors work?
Do you remember the name of the long pieces of metal that turn to make the helicopter fly? That's right, they're called the rotor blades. Did you hear the sound the helicopter made when I was standing near it?
Noisy, isn't it?
And did you see the way the helicopter travelled forwards when the pilot moved the lever inside the cockpit?
So now you know how the rotor on top of a helicopter works and how it makes a helicopter fly. Helicopters are exciting vehicles, aren't they? They're fun to watch in the air, but not many people travel around in helicopters. But there are lots of other vehicles, aren't there? And you might have had a go on some of them. You might have been on a bicycle, or a scooter, or maybe a tricycle. Have you ever ridden a tricycle? Tricycles are great fun. They're a bit like bicycles, except they have 3 wheels instead of 2. And that helps you to balance. Off I go. But do you know how a tricycle is made? Let's find out.
How is it made?
A tricycle.
To see how a tricycle is made, I've come here. Inside that workshop, they make lots of tricycles, some for grown-ups and some for children. Let's go see how one's made. To make a tricycle, first the mechanics open up this box. And can you believe that all the parts needed to build one tricycle fit inside? Over to you, Scott.
There are 25 parts to this tricycle, and they're all different shapes and sizes.
Can you guess what some of them are going to be? This is one of the pedals, the part you push with your feet to turn the wheels. And what about this? Well, these are the handlebars, the bit you hold with your hands. And what about this one? This is called the saddle, and it's the bit you sit on. Now all the pieces are out of the box, Scott can start making the tricycle. First, he puts two big red pieces of metal onto a stand. The metal pieces are called the frame, and he attaches them together. Scott hangs them up on the stand because it makes it easier to attach all the other pieces. It's like it's floating in midair.
On goes the saddle.
Next, Scott is going to put the chain on. The chain is a big loop of metal links that help the pedals turn the wheels, but this can be fiddly. So I'm going to put a special camera on Scott's head. Okay. By attaching the camera to Scott's head, we're going to be able to see what he sees when he's putting the bike chain on. Does that feel comfortable?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay.
Now we're getting a really clear view of everything Scott is seeing. First, he's picked up the chain and looped it around that metal circle. It's called the cog. Scott joins the chain together using a chain tool. He adjusts the frame of the bike using a spanner to make sure the chain is tight. Then he tests it to make sure the chain fits perfectly and won't fall off.
Now the chain is fixed in place, the next part of the tricycle to go on are these. They're pedals.
You push the pedals with your feet to turn the chain, which moves the tricycle.
There are still quite a few pieces left, aren't there? Well, now we need the front mudguard. A back mudguard. The other back mudguard. Back basket. And the front basket. Now it's time for the front wheel, and it's attached to the frame with these big bolts. Well, you can't have a tricycle without handlebars, and these ones are great because they've got a bell on them. Listen to this sound.
Let's hear it again.
Isn't that fun? Here you go, Scott. To attach the handlebars, Scott is using a special tool. It's called an Allen key, and you might have seen a grown-up using one at home. It has a shape at the end of it. Do you know what this is? This shape is a hexagon, and it has 6 sides.
This fits into a bolt at the top of the handlebars, and as Scott twists it, it makes sure they're on really tight. Next, Scott attaches the brakes and cables.
Brakes are really important because we need them to stop the tricycle. This bit here is called the brake lever, and when we squeeze it, this cable pulls these bits of rubber onto the wheel, which slows it down and brings it to a stop, like this. Having started with all those pieces, we've got just 2 left, the back wheels.
wheels are attached to the tricycle and it's ready to go.
And here is the finished tricycle. What do you think? It looks fantastic, doesn't it? But sometimes the mechanics here add a few extra bits so that children with disabilities can use the tricycles too. These pedals have extra straps to help keep your feet in the right place, and this saddle has a comfy backrest and a seat belt. This is great for someone who needs a bit of extra help sitting up. And this is a handle so that a grown-up can help push somebody along. What was your favourite bit about seeing how a tricycle was made?
Do you remember what you call the special tool Scott used to tighten the bolts on the handlebars? That's right, it's an Allen key. Did you hear the sound the bell made when I pressed it?
Isn't that fun?
And did you see all the different parts of the tricycle when they were unpacked from the big box?
So the next time you see a tricycle or get to ride on one yourself, you know just how it's made. And now you know how a helicopter rotor works, just like on this one here. I'll see you next time. Bye!
There are lots of things all around us, exciting things that surround us.
But how does it work?
Do you know?
How is it made?
Do you know? Things that go up, things that go down, things that go pop, things that go round with special cameras to show you inside. It's going to be a big surprise.
But how does it work?
Do you know?
How is it made?
Do you know? Do you know?
Let's find out!
Hello, I'm Maddie, and guess what? I bet that you've been to the toilet today. I know I have, and a lot of other people will have too. We've all got toilets in our homes, and yours probably looks a lot like this one. Toilets are everywhere because we all need to use them. But do you know how a toilet works? Let's find out.
How does it work?
A toilet flush.
There are two parts to a toilet. This big square part is called the cistern and it's full of water. And then this bit underneath is called the bowl. Have you ever wondered how your poo and wee disappear when you press this button? Well, to find out, we need to look deeper inside the toilet.
When you press the flush button, it moves a lever, which pulls a plug out of a hole at the bottom of the cistern. Fresh water flushes out of the cistern into the toilet bowl below. The water is so powerful that it pushes through the old water and your wee or poo out through the pipe at the bottom of the toilet bowl. When the water has left the cistern, air travels up the pipe. It makes a funny gurgling noise.
So that's how a flush works. Have you heard that gurgly sound before? Let's listen out for it, shall we? Ready?
Here comes the gurgle.
So now you know that that noise is the sound of air travelling up the pipe to stop the flush. But I want to see inside the cistern when the toilet is being flushed. Let's open it up and have a look.
I'm going to show you inside, but you mustn't play with the toilet or cistern yourself.
So you can see inside the cistern is full of water. I've got my special underwater camera with me. Let's put it inside the cistern so we can see what happens when we flush the toilet. But you shouldn't put things in the toilet at home. I'll pop my rubber gloves on first. There There are lots of different parts inside the cistern. You have rods and pipes and bits that float. If you look here at the top, these are the buttons which you press when you want to make the flush work. And if you follow the buttons all the way to the bottom of the cistern, you can see the plug. And the plug is the bit that lets the water out when you flush at the toilet. So let's see that in action. You can see that the cistern completely empties of water. But look what's happening. The cistern is filling back up with water. Why is that happening? Can you see that white plastic block just here? That is called the float. And it's called the float because it floats on the water in the cistern and it's connected to this white plastic arm.
Now, watch what happens when I flush the toilet.
This float drops, and that means the plastic arm opens up a tap which starts filling the cistern back up with water. But the really clever bit is that when the cistern is full, the float rises and the plastic arm shuts the tap off, so the water stops filling the cistern and you don't flood your bathroom.
Let's see it again. When I press the flush, the plug is released and the water drains out of the cistern into the toilet bowl. When the cistern is empty, the plug goes back in, the float drops and the water fills up again.
The cistern fills back up again pretty quick, which is great because it means the next time someone else wants to use the toilet, the flush is ready to go. I think toilets are really clever. What was your favourite bit about seeing how a toilet flush worked?
Can you remember the name of the top part of the toilet that holds the water? That's right, it's the cistern, and it empties out the water when you flush the toilet. Did you hear the gurgling sound the toilet made after it was flushed? Here it comes. Did you see how the cistern filled up again straight after it was flushed?
So, the next time you flush the toilet, you'll know how it works. But do you know how a toilet is made? Let's find out.
How is it made?
A toilet.
We'll start here in an enormous toilet factory.
This busy factory makes over 1,500 toilets a day.
Toilets are made from this. It's called clay. But it's not like the stuff you play with. This is a runny liquid.
Clay comes from the ground and it's used to make lots of different things. Like a bowl you can eat your breakfast from, a plant pot, or a piggy bank.
It's being poured through this pipe into this huge tank. It's being swirled around to stop any lumpy bits. It looks a bit like a muddy shower, doesn't it? Next, it goes into another tank where it's bounced around.
This bouncing around is called vibration. The clay is shaken around so much, it smooths out any small lumps and bumps.
I've got my special camera with me so I can get up close to the clay and show you what it looks like. Here goes. The vibrating tank is very noisy.
I love the sound the clay makes. And look how the clay is jumping around as it's being shaken up. Let's see it in slow motion. Look at all the funny shapes the clay makes.
I'm getting quite messy here. Sorry, special camera.
When the clay is ready, it's pumped through through pipes into these moulds.
The mould will give the toilet its shape. It's a bit like a jelly mould or a cake mould. And when it's completely full of clay, air is pushed in, and this will dry the clay out and make it firm. And now, that robot is lifting the clay toilet out of its mould, ready to go on to the next stage.
Can you hear the sound of the robot as it's working? Listen to the whooshes and zooms as it kicks into action.
I love how the orange robot knows just where it's going. It very gently lifts the clay toilet out of its mould and places it on the conveyor belt.
The toilets aren't quite finished yet. They move along the conveyor belt to the next stage of the process.
Now the clay has come out of the mould, you can see they really look like toilet bowls, don't they? But the clay is still wet and soft. So what do you think happens next? That's right, the clay needs to be dried out.
The toilets now travel along the conveyor belt to go inside this noisy machine.
It's hot inside and it's called a dryer. As the clay gets hot, the water inside dries out, which makes the toilet go hard.
The toilets take 12 hours to dry. When the toilet comes out of the dryer, it looks lighter in colour as the clay is now dry. Now they're ready to be checked. The toilets have to be in perfect condition. These workers make sure the toilets are really clean before they're painted. Otherwise, the paint won't stick. They also check to make sure there's nothing wrong with them.
If there's any bumps or cracks, they go to another place. And here are just some of them. All of these toilets had something wrong with them, and they're called rejects. But it's not all bad news, because all of this clay can be reused and recycled, so they will become toilet bowls after all.
Back to the factory and our perfect toilets. And they're getting some finishing touches.
This robot is spraying a special paint onto the toilet bowl. It's called a glaze.
Look at how the robot sprays every nook and cranny. It doesn't miss a bit.
The glaze is waterproof, which is a good thing when you think how much water is going to flush through the toilet bowl. A finished glaze is like a hard, shiny shell. But these toilets still look a bit wet and sticky to me.
Let's see where they go next.
And that alarm means we're off. Next, these toilets get carried on this cart to a massive oven called a kiln. And a kiln gets really, really hot. Can you see that glowing light down there?
That's the kiln, and that's where our toilets are going. As the toilet bowls heat up inside the kiln, the clay and the glaze get hard and shiny. And after 17 hours, that's nearly a day and a night, the toilet bowls are finished.
And here they are. They're waterproof and shiny, ready to be used at home. What was your favourite bit about seeing how a toilet was made?
Do you remember the name of the special paint that makes the toilets waterproof? That's right, it's called a glaze, and it goes hard and shiny when it's cooked in a kiln. Did you hear the sounds of the robot's whooshes and zooms as it kicked into action? And did you see the way the clay moved with my special slow motion camera? It looked like it was dancing.
So the next time you go to the toilet, you know just how it was made, and you can think of those robots taking the clay toilet bowls out of the mould. And when you flush it, you know how the cistern empties and fills with water. I'll see you next time.
There are lots of things all around us, exciting things that surround us.
But how does it work?
Do you know?
How is it made?
Do you know? Things that go up, things that go down, things that go pop, things that go round with special cameras to show you inside. It's going to be a big surprise.
But how does it work?
Do you know?
How is it made?
Do you know? Do you know?
Let's find out!
Hello, I'm Maddie, and today I've come to a family theme park, and I'm going to have some fun on some rides. Do you like rides? I love them. I like fast rides, and I like rides that go round and round, and up and down. I found something that looks good to go on. Look over there. Do you know what this is? It's a carousel. You might have been on one. Just look at all the colours and the bright lights. But do you know how a carousel works? Let's find out.
How does it work?
A carousel.
What shall I ride on? I definitely want to go on a horse, but that one's a little bit small. Ah, I think this horse will do. Oh, and it's about to start. Off we go. When the carousel starts to go, it goes round and round, and the horses go up and down. So I go up and I go down. It's really fun. But how does it work? How do the horses go up and down? Well, if you look at the horse I'm sitting on, it's attached to a pole, and this pole goes all the way to the floor. But if you follow it up, it goes all the way up to the roof of the carousel, and that's called the canopy. But to see how this all works, you're going to need to go inside the canopy.
In the middle of a carousel is a big pole called the centre pole. At the top of the centre pole is a big cog called a gear. It has lots of grooves on it. Sticking out from the gear are lots of rods called sweeps. It looks like a big bike wheel. Each sweep has grooves on the end, which sit on top of the grooves on the gear. When the big gear moves round in a circle, it pulls all the sweeps round, making them spin too. But how do the horses go up and down? At the end of each sweep is something called a crankshaft. The crankshaft has a pole hanging down from it, and on the end of that is a horse. When the crankshaft spins round, it moves the pole round too, and this pulls the horse below up and down.
How clever is that? Shall we see it working on our carousel? Come with me. To show you, I've been given special permission to come up here. The canopy of the carousel. Look, can you see the horses below? How exciting! Ah, so this is the crankshaft, and then it's attached to the pole here, and at the bottom of the pole under the canopy is the horse, and the crankshaft goes round and round, and that lifts the pole up and down. Let's use my special camera so that we can see the crankshaft in action. I'll have a go on this horse. Let's see what my special camera shows us when the carousel's moving. Off we go. I'm going up and down again, and then up. Carousels are really fun. If I look up, I can actually see the pole moving up and down. And what is happening is the crankshaft is going round and round, and as it's doing so, it's lifting the pole, so I go up, and then I come back down again. And I go up, and I come back down again. And it's also meaning I move from side to side a little bit, so it's giving me the feeling that I'm rocking and that I'm on a real horse. I can actually hear the crankshafts working up in the canopy.
Listen to the whirring sound the crankshaft makes as it goes round and round.
Whee! Up and down, up and down, and oh! I think the ride's come to an end. I had so much fun on the carousel. So the next time you see one or have a go on one, you'll know just how it works and you'll know why the horses go up and down. I loved seeing how a carousel works. What was your favourite bit?
Do you remember the name for the roof of the carousel? That's right, it's the canopy. Did you hear the sound the crankshaft made when the carousel moved round and round? And did you see the poles go up and down to make the horses move?
And finished! What do you think of my drawing of a carousel? Do you like to draw or maybe colour things in? Drawing is a great way to have fun and you can do it anywhere. I like to draw with brightly coloured crayons like this one or this one. But do you know how crayons are made? Let's find out.
How is it made?
A wax crayon.
To find out how crayons are made, we need to come here to a crayon factory. Wax crayons start out like this as an ingredient called paraffin. Paraffin is an oil that's found deep under the ground, but to make wax crayons, paraffin oil is turned into this: paraffin wax pellets. Paraffin is used to make all sorts of things.
Like plastic toys, candles you blow out on a birthday cake, and of course, wax crayons.
What colour crayon shall we make today? We could make blue, green, how about yellow, or red? Let's make some red crayons.
The first stage is for the paraffin wax pellets to be poured into this huge tank.
Inside, the paraffin wax pellets are heated until they turn runny, and when it's ready, it's emptied into a bucket and taken to a mixing area.
But how does it turn from a clear liquid into a coloured wax crayon?
This is pigment. Pigment is a coloured powder that gives crayons their colour.
To make our red crayon, we need to use the red pigment. The red pigment and melted wax pellets are mixed together really well until the mixture is ready to be made into crayon shapes.
This is a crayon mould. It's a bit like a mould you might use to make jelly at home, only this one is a lot bigger. Each of these holes is the size and shape of one crayon, and there are 960 holes. That means this mould will make 960 crayons in one go. The red mixture is being poured into the moulds. Inside the machine, the crayon moulds are surrounded by cold water. This cold water cools down the mixture, and as it cools down, it begins to go hard.
And this new hard material is called wax.
The team uses a tool called a scraper to move the wax around the moulds. This makes sure that they're all completely filled to the top and don't have any air bubbles. I think the crayons are ready because the wax mixture on top has gone hard and needs to be scraped off. Time to push the crayons out of the mould. Let's see what they look like.
That's brilliant.
That is 960 red crayons. That's impressive.
Let's see it again. The crayons are stacked, ready to go to the next stage. And the leftover wax is melted down to be used again.
Look at all these crayons. But there's something missing. It needs to be wrapped, and this machine wraps each crayon in its own wrapper. I'm going to use my special little camera to see how this machine wraps every crayon.
I'll put my first camera here, where the crayons get stacked up, ready for labelling. My second camera will see the crayons as they travel towards the labelling machine. And my third camera will go on this conveyor belt to see the crayons as they come out with their nice new labels on. So now we're ready, let's get labelling. In they go! And look, they're being carried up something that looks like an escalator. And here they are, nicely spaced out, ready for their labels. The labels are like big stickers, which are wrapped around each crayon. Look, here they come.
I really like the sound this wrapping machine makes. It's a lovely ticking sound, a bit like a ticking clock. Tick, tock, tick, tock, tick, tock. Once the crayons have been wrapped, they move down this conveyor belt and every one of them is checked.
Uh-oh, look! That one's got a crack in it.
If they're not up to scratch, they get thrown away. But don't worry, nothing's wasted. These will just get melted down again, ready to be made into more crayons. I've got a packet of crayons here, but there's one colour missing. Do you know what it is? It's the red crayon. And now, I can get back to drawing. I loved seeing how wax crayons are made. What was your favourite bit?
Do you remember what wax crayons are made of? That's right, it's paraffin, which is a type of oil. Did you hear the sound the labelling machine made? Sounded like a ticking clock. And did you see the crayons rising out of the mould?
That's impressive. So the next time you're having fun drawing something, you'll know how crayons are made. And if you see or have a go on a carousel just like this one, you'll know how it works. Now, what shall I draw next? See you next time.
There are lots of things all around us, exciting things that surround us.
But how does it work?
Do you know?
How is it made?
Do you know? Things that go up, things that go down, things that go pop, things that go round with special cameras to show you inside. It's going to be a big surprise.
But how does it work?
Do you know?
How is it made?
Do you know? Do you know?
Let's find out!
Hello, I'm Maddie, and today I'm on a building site. Just think, the house or flat where you live once started off like this. A great big pile of bricks and wood ready to be made into a building. You should never go onto a building site without a grown-up, but we've got special permission to show you something really exciting.
A lot of the things used to make houses are very heavy. Far too heavy for me to pick up, so I need something super clever to help me. Can you guess what it is?
A crane! A crane is the safest way to move things around that are too heavy for people to pick up. But do you know how a crane works? Let's find out.
How does it work?
A crane.
Before the crane can do anything, it needs to stand on its own feet.
You should never play around vehicles. Always make sure you're near a grown-up. These special feet keep the crane steady when it picks up heavy things and stops it rolling away. Look how it's lifting the wheels off the ground.
The place where the driver sits is called the cab. In here there are lots of levers he uses with his hands and pedals which he moves with his feet. The levers are connected to the big arm, and when the driver moves the levers, this big arm moves across the sky. It's called the boom. And look, it gets longer too.
The boom gets longer and shorter in the same way my telescope works.
The first part of my telescope is slightly thinner than the second part, so this means the first part can move easily in and out, meaning the telescope can get longer or shorter, just like the boom on the crane. So we've seen how the driver uses the levers to move the boom around, but how does the boom get longer and shorter and move higher into the sky? To find out, we need to take a closer look.
Here comes the crane. And there's the boom. To make the crane get longer and higher, there are special tubes called hydraulic cylinders underneath the boom. The tubes are full of water and oil. When a button is pressed in the cab, the water and oil are pumped upwards inside the tube. They have nowhere to go, and so this pushes the boom up. There are also hydraulic cylinders inside the boom. When another button is pushed, the water and oil inside these cylinders are pumped up too. This pushes the boom out, making it longer. But do you know how the crane picks things up? Different things can be attached to the end of the boom to pick things up in all sorts of ways. A fork to lift things up from the bottom. Or a grabber to grab hold of things, like a great big hand. Or a chain to pick things up from the top.
There's something on the end of this boom. Do you know what this is? That's right, it's called a hook. And the crane uses the hook to hook onto things to pick them up. It's clever, isn't it? I've got my special camera with me and I'm going to put it on the hook so we can see what it looks like from high up on the crane. And we have liftoff. The special camera is moving higher into the air. Hello! The special camera can see so much from way up high. It's still going higher and higher. I can't believe it, I look as small as an ant. That is so high. Do we bring it back down again? Hello, camera. How brilliant was that? But we want the crane to move this great big pile of wood onto the back of that truck.
Let's see how it does it. Up goes the boom. Listen to the sound it makes. It's like an aeroplane taking off. That's the hydraulic cylinders pushing the boom arm up into the sky. Once the boom is in the right position, some special chains are wrapped around the wood and attached to the hook.
Off we go, Paul! The chains are on and the boom is about to lift up that pile of wood. It's a bit like a game of Hook the Duck, isn't it? Have you played that before? That pile of wood weighs the same as a family car, but it's no problem for the crane, is it? The boom is moving across in the sky to make sure the wood is in the right position, and then it will lower it down onto the truck. Brilliant. What was your favourite bit about seeing how a crane works?
Can you remember the name of the big arm that the driver controls? That's right, it's called the boom. Did you like the sound the hydraulic cylinder made as it pushed the boom up into the sky? And did you see how high up the crane went with my special camera?
That is so high!
There are lots of things that cranes can move. There's wood and these bricks.
Most houses and buildings are made with lots of bricks. The bricks are built into walls that hold up the roof and keep out the rain and wind, helping us to stay warm and safe. They have to be very strong and last a long time.
But do you know how bricks are made? Let's go and find out.
How is it made?
A brick.
Well, to make a brick, you have to start off in a place like this. It's called a quarry.
A quarry is a place where we dig in the ground for things like rock or sand. This digger is digging for something used to make bricks. Clay.
This is clay. It's found underground and it's full of water, which makes it all squishy. Just listen to the sound. All squelchy and soft. Clay can be squished into all sorts of shapes and it's used to make lots of different things. Clay makes dinner plates, plant pots. You might have even used clay yourself. Look, I've turned some clay into a little man. As well as clay, bricks are made from this, sand. Sand is really strong and is made from rocks that are crushed into tiny, tiny bits. Now, if you've ever built a sandcastle, then you'll know just how good sand is for building things. The sand is mixed with the clay and these tiny black things. Do you know what this is? It's called coal. Coal is made from trees and plants that died millions of years ago, and over time it's turned black, and now it's more like a rock than plants. Isn't that amazing? Now let's go see how the clay, the sand and the coal are all mixed together. Come and look. Sand and coal is being mixed inside this huge drum, but I want to get a closer look. Luckily, I've got my special camera with me on a long pole, so we can get right inside the mixer and see what's going on. Wow, that's brilliant! 2 big wheels inside the drum spinning round to really crush up the sand, the clay and the coal, to mix it together.
When the mix is ready, it goes along a special moving shelf called a conveyor belt.
It travels through the factory and then it goes through this machine, oozes onto the table where John can turn it into a brick.
John uses a special box like this. It's called a mould, and it's the shape of a brick. John puts in a dollop of the mixture, which he flattens with a piece of wood. He then turns the mould over, and out comes a brick. The problem is, even though the mixture looks like a brick, it's still soft and squidgy. And you can't build a house with a brick like that. Do you know how we could make the brick dry and turn hard? The bricks are put in a special place called a kiln to dry. They will have to be in there for 3 whole days.
The bricks are now dry, but they're not very strong or hard. They're still a little bit crumbly. To become hard enough to be built into houses, they have to be cooked in an oven.
This is called firing, and it's really noisy. Can you see that the bricks have turned yellow?
This means that they're very, very hot.
The bricks are fired for another 3 days.
Firing the bricks makes the clay dry out even more, so they become really hard. And these are finished bricks. Wow, I can't believe how much they've changed. They're not soft and squishy anymore. Now they're really, really hard, and I think ready to build a house with.
I loved seeing how bricks were made. Did you? What was your favourite bit? Can you remember the name of the special boxes the clay and sand mixture was put into? That's right, they're called moulds, and they give the bricks their special shape. Did you like the sound of the sloppy clay squelching in my hands? And did you see how the bricks got so hot in the kiln that they turned yellow?
So the next time you're in your house, you'll know how the bricks were made and how the big cranes were used to move them all about. See you next time.
There are lots of things